All right, we're here in Morris at the office of David Welter, Illinois State Representative for the 75th District, and we're talking to U.S. Congressman Adam Kinzinger. Nice enough to have him join us here today, right down the street from his house in Shannon. Congressman, thanks for your time today.
Yeah, it's good to be with you.
Where do we start? We start with the end of the Trump presidency, COVID, the election, riots throughout the summer and some into the winter as well. Then the incident in Washington, D.C., now the vaccine. Pick a topic, because there are plenty of them. This has been unreal the last 16 months.
It has. And, I think with all the anger that's out there, I think it doesn't excuse violence, rioting, anything like that, whether we're talking about January 6th of the summer. But I think looking at just kind of people and what people have been through, initially being locked down and not really given a date certain. And it's probably good we weren't given a date certain, because if they'd have said, a year later, and then that builds up and, people looking at the internet and getting pulled into conspiracies because they have a lot more time to do it. And then we had the riots in the summer, which were very destructive. I was activated for them with the Guard. I worked Minneapolis. And then, of course, leading into the election on January 6th. So I think the best place to start is to say we have been through a lot as Americans. And I think you can't compare it to, of course, like, Pearl Harbor or anything along that lines. But I do think when historians look back, they're going to say that was a pretty stressful 2020.
Right.
And 2021, frankly.
I want to talk about America, but I also want to talk about you first and foremost. It's been an interesting year for you as well. You came out and spoke against the riots, came out and spoke against the former president, and you have been through a lot. I'm not saying that you didn't sign up for it as a congressman. You enjoy the job. You've told me that numerous times. But for you personally, with your family, with a lot of your constituents right here, I mean, in your hometown, there were signs up that said, Adam Kinzinger, right by your house, don't run again. I mean, what has that been like for you?
It's tough. And, just being honest, I never expected to be in this position, and I don't want to be in this position. It's not like I've sought out to be, the only person or one of just a few people saying this stuff and having everybody be mad at me. That's not something fun. Right. But for me, I feel a real sense of peace, because I really truly believe what I'm saying is right, and I'm telling the truth to people. But just, on a personal level, it is tough. People are very supportive. Nobody comes up in public and yells at me, and I push back if they do.
Right.
But there's definitely a sense of you've been kicked out of the Republican tribe, and obviously I'm not in the Democratic tribe. And but again, I feel peaceful with where I'm at.
Okay. I did make a statement on the air, and I don't know if you heard the statement that I made. NBC, MSNBC, CNN, you have become their go-to guy because, in my opinion, you're furthering their agenda just a little bit. Oh, here's an R. Mm-hmm. Here's a conservative from north central Illinois, who was a Republican darling, and now he thinks like we do. What would your response be to that?
I don't fully disagree with that, because look, right now the media has become so polarized. Right. I try to get on Fox News. They don't want me. And right. Why don't they want me? Because it goes against their narrative, what I'm saying. Look, January 6th was a Trump-inspired insurrection. Sorry, it was. All these other things, they don't want that on there. But CNN, MSNBC, some of the Sunday shows, they do. And so I have a choice. I either be quiet or I get it out on the venue I can. And that's obviously, look, Republicans know what I'm saying. So even if it's not on necessarily the news network they watch. But I do think the stratification and division and polarization of the media has become a real problem.
Well, and it's all about talking points as well. If you bring up education, one side says, critical race theory is terrible. The other one says it's not. We bring up defunding the police. One side says, well, it's because we defunded the police. And the other side says, well, it's guns that are the issue. So where can we go other than WJOL radio? Shameless plug. Shameless plug for the truth. Where can we go?
And I'm not saying this because you just said that. Local media, I think, is so important. And whether it's local television stations, local radio stations, local newspapers, because they don't get as into the trying to just outrage for profit.
Right.
There's news you're going to hear about that's good locally. The national news only does really bad news, honestly. And you need that input of good news. But I also think, look, as I don't know how to get us to this point, but as you mentioned, every issue, I could name any issue, And there's only two sides now to those issues. It used to be abortion, you're either pro-life or pro-choice. Now it's like any issue you have to pick a side. And I think the truth is that's where the parties are. That is not where the American people are. If you think about guns, for instance, there's nobody out there saying we want to take every single gun away. There's a few, but not a ton of people. And there's nobody saying you should be able to buy an M1A1 Abrams. Right. And so people shouldn't be put in those categories. There are people along that spectrum. And I think we have to learn, the thing I recommend to people, if you're a conservative, get a liberal friend. If you're a liberal, get a conservative friend, and actually talk about what are your fears, and you'll learn that everybody actually has the same fears, and you're not that different.
A couple of Friday nights ago, I spent the 9 o'clock hour with a pad of paper, a pen, and my remote control. I go from Fox, CNN, MSNBC for 1 hour, wrote down topics that they were talking about. You would have thought I was living in 3 different countries.
Totally. Yeah, and that's the problem. So when I talk about January 6th, people get mad, that watch Fox News, because Fox News doesn't talk about January 6th. If you talk about the disaster that's coming in Afghanistan, for instance, or you talk about the issue of critical race theory, CNN and MSNBC don't cover that. And so if you look at all these different kind of worlds we live in, that's a real concern. Because if we're operating under different facts, I think it's really hard for a republic to survive. I don't think we're at threat now, but I actually do think we're at threat in the medium to long term.
How much is social media a factor in all of this? When Google can decide what stories you see, what stories you can't see, search history, so on and so forth.
Yes, and that's a big problem. If you look at, frankly, at the beginning of the pandemic, whether it was vaccine hesitancy, whether it was QAnon, and there's some stuff on the left, you could see how people are drug into rabbit holes too. I saw an example of somebody that said she went on a Facebook group for organic food and ended up being recommended an anti-vaccination site. That's a big problem. And I don't know the answer to how do you keep social media fair, but I also know we don't want to get in a position where we're in essence forcing social media overseas, because TikTok is a Chinese company. Right. TikTok is actually really dangerous, and I'd recommend anybody not to use it. But imagine if Facebook goes to China, and now all of a sudden, all that social media is controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. It's not a place we want to be. But that's a discussion that I think deserves real attention. Okay.
Let's talk about 2022. Mm-hmm. Are you going to run again?
Yeah, it's fully my intention to. Okay. We don't know what the districts are yet. I've had no indications of what they are. But yeah, I intend to run again.
Okay, and as of right now, 6, you would make 6, or have I missed anyone?
There's probably maybe a dozen now.
Okay. What will your message be to people who are disappointed that you're not Republican enough anymore?
Yeah, my message will simply be the truth, and reminding them that I actually am still a conservative. And I think there's a lot of the party that has drifted away from conservatism. I would say that some of the things that are being argued right now by, generically speaking, the Republican Party violate conservative principles. For instance, the idea that the federal government can overturn elections in states. We're the Federalist Party. We're the ones that believe in states' rights, and many other things. So I'm going to tell people the truth. I think I'm going to win. If I don't, though, I'll be able to look at myself in the mirror, because what the problem is the base voter, the average Republican, their leaders, with the exception of like me, their leaders aren't telling them the truth. So I don't blame them for not believing some of the stuff I'm saying, because nobody else is saying it.
Right. Should Donald Trump leave the Republican Party to someone else? Is he going to hurt it more in 22 than help it?
Look, I want to respect the fact that he was president. And I would love it if he did what every other former president has done, which is kind of go away and be a former president, a statesman. And he's made the determination he wants to run the Republican Party. That's where I'll resist him. Yes, I think he, as a leader of the Republican Party, needs to go away, because that is not a recipe that is going to win us. It may win us 2022, and it may even win us 2024 if the Democrats are so bad. It's not long-term healthy for this country or for the party.
Made the statement numerous times on my show. As soon as someone goes to the middle, they're going to dominate for a while. Democrats, I think, are in a perfect position right now. If the president would step up and not pay attention so much to what the progressives want and become more in the middle, I think it's 2022 will be tough, yes, but 2024 for whoever he anoints, or if he wants to run again, could win again. And the same thing kind of goes for the Tea Party several years ago. I mean, we talked about that before.
Yep.
Had the Republicans not gone so extreme, they would have had more success.
This is what always happens, and I actually just read a really good but boring book on it. It's called Unstable Majorities. And the point of it is, it takes a party still has to win independents to win the presidency,
right.
for instance. Mm-hmm. The problem is the second they get in power, particularly unified power, they are now beholden to the loudest part of that party, which is, whether it's AOC or whether it was the Freedom Caucus on our side, that says we're going to withdraw our support unless you go more radical, and they're forced to get an agenda done. And that's been the problem with whipsawing control, is the radicals, the party will attract independents until they have the power. They go radical, independents go, let's go with these guys, they go radical, and everybody's just caught in this washing machine.
Let's throw some names out. Tell me not necessarily what you think about them, but what they're really like behind the headlines. Nancy Pelosi.
She is ruthless and cold. I respect her as a politician. I'm not a big fan of Nancy Pelosi. But I actually do give her credit. She has held back a lot of the AOC types in the Democrats. But she's a tough person to cross because she's really cold and calculated.
President Biden?
I don't know him well. I think he's done a good job in terms of tone, but I don't like his policies. Obviously, we're overspending. The withdrawal in Afghanistan is going to be a disaster. I respect him as president, but I will respectfully oppose him.
Kamala Harris?
Don't know much about her. She's not impressed me what I've seen so far, particularly with the border trip.
All right. The AOCs of the world, are they as radical as they're portrayed by right-wing media?
Yeah, they're radical. They're nice in person. The interesting dynamic is, I think because you see it on TV or you read it in the papers or you hear it on the radio, it seems like everybody's just battling, and we are. But when you're actually seeing each other face to face, they're nice enough. Yeah.
Nice enough.
Yeah.
Okay. Is America racist? We keep being told we are.
No. Look, I think, it's one thing to say and confront racist past, and we all know that, and we should confront that. We should be aware of that. But if you are a minority anywhere in the world, the chances that you're being treated better in the United States is way better. I mean, you look at the things that we point out as challenges here are what people would die for to only have as challenges in other places. Yeah. America is the best country in the world, and recognizing our flaws in the past doesn't mean we can't celebrate how awesome we really are. And the other thing is, look, yes, some of the founding fathers had slaves or were okay with slavery. It was a different time, so let's celebrate that we've moved on from that and celebrate the self-governance that they put into place.
Border crisis. Is it one? It sure seems like it is.
It is. And I was down there, twice with the Air Guard on the border, I think 2 years ago and 3 years ago, and it was a disaster then, and it's only gotten worse. The wall has made a difference, and I think to the extent where you can complete the wall, we have to. Because what that does, it shrinks the area of the border you have to monitor otherwise. But what is clear is the economic situation is worse in Central America than it has been because of COVID. And once all that restrictions lift, it's going to be even worse than we imagine.
Okay. Why is the wall so polarizing? What's wrong with it? We talked the other morning, Democrat mayors in certain counties along the border of Texas, they don't want to build it. Meanwhile, Republican states are pouring money in. What is the wall? Is it a symbol of Donald Trump? Is that the problem?
I think that's what it is. I do. And I think, when Donald Trump made that a keystone of his campaign, when he said Mexico's going to pay for it, and we all know Mexico's never going to pay for it, I think from that point, and I'm not actually blaming him for it being polarized because of him, but I think the Democrats made that something they could never move past. Look at the investigation into COVID-19. Mm-hmm. There are real serious indications that this came from a lab. And you see a lot of my Democratic colleagues that are afraid to even talk about that. Look, you have a country that is a real competitor of the United States, borderline enemy, that might have, because intentionally or most likely unintentionally, created a pandemic that's now 16 months later cost millions of lives, 600,000 in the U.S. We should get answers to that, and it shouldn't be partisan.
All right, well, unfortunately it is.
Mm-hmm.
Who should run the Republican Party moving forward? If not Donald Trump, who should be that person?
Well, I would love to see, you know, somebody like you know, frankly, I honestly don't see anybody out there right now. The person I'm excited about potentially for 2024 is somebody like a Tim Scott. He's a good friend of mine. I think he's vaguely looking at the presidency. I think he would be a clean break, maintaining some of the policies and principles we believe in, all of them, but a clean break from the anger. And this is what we as a party, if we think that feeding people's anger is like drawing anybody to our side that wasn't there already, I would argue that's probably not happening.
Right. All right, throw a couple Republican names at you. Mitch McConnell.
I actually think Mitch McConnell is pretty great. You know, I know a lot of people hate him, but as a Republican, he's the Nancy Pelosi of the Republicans, right? He's cold, he's calculating. And if you're a Democrat, you hate him. But as a Republican, I think he's able to get some things done.
Okay. What about Governor Desantis? Any hope for him moving forward?
Yeah, I think a lot of it's going to depend. How does he manage this? How does he manage the Trump relationship? Because, you know, Trump, I'm hearing, is a little upset that DeSantis is getting so much attention, but he's going to have to break from Trump if he wants to be the nominee. And I know him. I served with him in Congress, and I think he'd be a great candidate for president. All
right. Kind of wrapping things up here. Your thoughts moving forward. You've already told us you're going to run again. You already told us you hope you'll win. You already explained it's been a very, very tough year. What is your message right now to the Republicans who have jumped off your bandwagon? Because a lot of them have.
Look, I understand it, and I don't blame anybody, but I would encourage you to seek out the truth. I mean, if you really believe that I'm doing this for any reason, but I was there on January 6th and saw it. I know the officers that were beat up. I know who was involved in that crowd. I know the violence that occurred, and I know the stuff that led up to it. And I've had death threats against me, Scott, and the death threats don't come from Democrats. No. They're coming from Republicans, for goodness sakes. Is that really the party you want to be in? And I know the anger feels good, and I know the dark feels good, but truthfully, we have to be the party of light and truth. And even if that truth isn't convenient for us, if we're the party of truth, we're going to save this country going forward.
2022, is it going to be a red wave?
I don't, unless we correct course, I doubt a red wave. I do think the tailwinds are so strong, though, that we will probably take the majority.
Okay, and who will be the next president of the United States?
I honestly think it'll be a Republican. I just have no idea who that is yet. I'd love to see Tim Scott or anything.
Congressman Kinzinger, thanks for your time today. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you bet. Great to see you.
All right,
Thanks.
Adam Kinzinger live from David Walter's office in Morris.